Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Allison and this is episode 3 of my knitting podcast. It is officially December, which means it is officially biting off more than I can chew and committing to lots of gift knits season. This is my 3rd year in a row, I think, committing to knitting gifts for a lot of my family members. Typically every year there's at least one that doesn't make the Christmas deadline. This year I'm really trying my best. I do have a handful of projects here that are kind of whips for myself, but it's definitely the gifts that are being prioritized this time of year. So I don't know how much I will actually show of those, but I will share kind of what my gift knitting plans are. Plus I have a very, very exciting whip that I started about a week ago now, and I've just been obsessed with it and chugging away at it, so I cannot wait to share that. I will really quickly touch on what I'm wearing today. This is the Sadie sweater by Oyster. It was actually a finished object in my last podcast episode, so I won't talk too much about it. I knit this up in Purl Soho linen Quill, which is a wool linen alpaca blend. I've really been loving the yarn. It's wearing well. I am obsessed still with these rolled cuff, neckline, and hem details. It's a super easy, beginner-friendly pattern. It is stockinette the whole way through. There's no ribbing whatsoever. So it was a really enjoyable knit, really quick to knit up. I think it took me like 4 weeks. And I love it. I've been getting tons of wear out of it. Yeah. As for my finished objects this week, I don't actually have anything physically with me. So I have touched on this before, but my 2 maids of honor, I wanted to knit them each a garment to thank them for being my maids of honor. Wanted to have them ready for my wedding in May. Clearly didn't. But this past weekend, we all got together for my birthday and I was able to finally gift those knits. So I am excited to share them finally. I feel like I've been talking about them for a long time. For the first garment, my friend had requested a cropped off-white cabled cardigan, which should have been fairly simple to find. I was kind of scouring through Ravelry looking for the perfect pattern and was having a lot of trouble finding it. This was back in January, February of this year, so almost a whole year ago. And I had found some that I thought were nice, but I really was looking for a top-down pattern. I didn't want anything seamed. I have made seamed garments in the past, but because I was already doing an intricate cable design, I kind of wanted to keep it easy on myself, do something I'm familiar with, which is working top-down. So ultimately, I wasn't able to find that pattern that really spoke to me, that I saw and was like, yes, this is it, this is perfect. I feel like within the last few months or weeks, a lot of really beautiful cabled cardigan patterns have been coming out. I feel like those are extremely trendy right now and I am dying to knit one for myself. But back then I just was not finding what it was that I wanted. So I was actually inspired by a user that I saw on Ravelry, that I will tag below, who had modified the sweater number 20 by My Favorite Things Knitwear to turn it into a cardigan. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, that's perfect. The sweater number 20 is a beautiful pattern, has really, really chunky cables that just look super gorgeous knitted up. So I decided that I was going to embark on this kind of modification journey, something that I had never dove into before. Especially not with a cabled garment. So this felt like a pretty intimidating endeavor that ultimately ended up not being too bad. Essentially what I did was I just cast it on the sweater as normal, knit the back as normal. It was when it came to the front that I had to make some modifications to the cable chart, which I did with stitch fiddle. Essentially all I did was I wanted to lower the V-neck. I believe that the V-neck for the sweater version comes up a little bit higher. I wanted the cardigan to sort of come to a V around here and then have the buttons added on from there. So this obviously involved a little bit of manipulation of the cable pattern. Essentially what I did was I just knitted straight instead of adding any increases on the shoulders, and then once I got to a certain point, that is when I started adding the increases at a lesser rate than is included in the pattern in order to have a more dramatic V. So I did take some B-roll, I will include that, and you can definitely see sort of where I'm slowly increasing before these stitches right here become a cable. That was just a result of me elongating the neckline, that it ended up coming out a little bit different than it looks in the finished pattern of the sweater. But overall, I am pretty happy with the modifications. Apart from lowering the V, the only other thing I did was omit the very center cable from the pattern, because I knew that later on when I added the button band, it was going to add a little bit of width back there. So I figured just cutting out this section here would account for the eventual button band. And then I just added a 2x2 rib button band all the way around to match the 2x2 details on the cuffs and the hem of the sweater as well. I actually knit this up in an acrylic yarn. I used Knitpicks Mighty Stitch. The friend I was knitting this for does not react very well to wool. She's had issues in the past where it's just really irritated her skin, so I wanted to make sure it was something that was going to be comfortable, that she would actually want to wear. The resulting garment came out way heavier than I'm used to, my typical wool garments, which of course can be attributed to the acrylic content of that yarn. And because I also held the yarn double, it definitely resulted in a heavier garment than I'm used to, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think once wearing it, it doesn't feel as like jarring, the weight of it. And it almost feels like a cozy little hug, like a weighted blanket maybe. So ultimately I am really, really happy with the outcome of this. I was kind of unsure if I had cropped it enough, but I did tell my friends when I gifted these items that if there are any modifications that they want made, I'm more than happy to adjust them. It was definitely an experiment for sure, having never adjusted any kind of pattern in this way with cables. Overall, I am, I do wish that this kind of looked a little bit cleaner around the neckline here, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a gorgeous garment and I am really happy with it. So I will insert some photos and some video here of me wearing it. I only gifted these like a day ago, so I don't have footage yet of my friends wearing them. But yeah, I am ultimately very happy with this. And it kind of makes me want to modify more sweaters in the future, and now that I know that I'm actually capable of doing it. So it was a really fun experiment to play around with, and ultimately did not end up being as difficult as I thought. So all in all, a great experience. It did take me about 4 months to finish, just because it is such an involved cable pattern, and I always wanted to have something on the side that was a little bit more mindless, like a stockinette shirt or sweater. But I also wanted to make sure that I was, putting in the time that it deserved, really making sure that this garment was coming out nice because it was a gift and it was a kind of a special piece for me. The next finished object is the other sweater for my other maid of honor. In this case, I had a little bit more freedom because she didn't specify exactly what kind of a style she wanted. I had sent out sort of a Google form asking for measurements, so I got a few kind of preferences through that, but I really did have a bit more freedom to pick kind of a pattern that I thought would work well. I remembered in the past having knitted a cable sweater. I couldn't even tell you what it was called anymore. This was years and years ago. It was a seamed cable sweater that I knitted up in an acrylic yarn, so I unfortunately don't wear it all that much anymore. But I remember her specifically expressing interest in that pattern, so I knew I wanted to do something again that was sort of cabled, a little bit more involved, intricate. And I actually already happened to own the pattern for the Seaview sweater by the Knit Purl girl, so I figured it was meant to be. This was perfect. It's definitely not as heavily cabled as the first sweater, but there is a lot of faux cabling as well in this. And I had already the perfect yarn color as well, so I thought it was just meant to be. So the yarn I actually used for this was something that I already had a little bit of in stash because I had used it on another project for myself. This friend of mine is definitely like leans autumn for her color spectrum. Looks great in warm autumn toned colors. So I figured that this color would be perfect for her. So I went ahead and just ordered a couple more balls of this yarn and used that to make the Seaview sweater for her. So while I don't have the finished garment here, I do have my garment that I made up with this yarn. So I will share that. This is my Louvre sweater by PetiteKnit. Definitely not the same as the Seaview sweater, which I will include in a second. But just to get an idea of the color of yarn, this is Knit Picks Swish worsted in the color, I believe it's copper. And yeah, so Louvre's just a simple plain stockinette, but you can see that it's a really gorgeous burnt orange color. This yarn, I will say, is very, very soft, very comfortable, but as a result does pill quite a bit. And so I have sort of shied away from using it on more garments for myself personally, but I think it is the perfect yarn for gift knitting if you're unsure of how your recipient will deal with wool. You know, if it's somebody who might be sensitive to a really woolly wool, then Swish is a great option because of how soft it is. It's a 100% superwash merino. They carry it in a DK weight, a worsted weight, and a bulky weight, I believe. I'm not sure if it goes lower than that, but I've used all three and loved them for gift knits. I have mainly purchased that for my gift knits this year, actually, because it's such an affordable option and such a nice soft option, and the color range is kind of unmatched. So I definitely knew I wanted to use this. I was also playing with the idea of using it on the first sweater as well for my friend who, you know, doesn't enjoy wearing wool, but because she has been so sensitive in the past to wool, I wanted to just really make sure that I wasn't giving her something that was going to irritate her skin, even if it is really, really soft. She does tend to be extra sensitive when it comes to wool. So I wanted to just be safe with that. But for this project, I did use the Swish, which was very enjoyable. So I will include some B-roll footage and some photos that I took of myself in it as well. All in all, I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. This took me about 3 months start to finish, a little bit more focused than the last one because I knew that I had, you know, a time crunch. I kind of wanted to get these gifted by the end of this year. I enjoyed knitting the pattern. I will say the one thing that I was not too sure about the pattern was the rate of the decreases for the sleeves. I felt when I was trying on the finished product that the sleeves felt a little tighter than I had expected them to, considering the size that I knitted. I definitely could have, and had I known, would have omitted some of those decreases to make the sleeves just a little bit less tight and fitted. But my friend loves the finished product, so if anything, I told her I could adjust that, even make the sleeves a bit longer because I'm notorious for making sleeves too short. And it's hard when gifting things for people, especially people who are taller than you, to sort of gauge how long it'll need to be and how long it'll come out after blocking. And if I keep looking down this way, it's because I have Ravelry open here, so I apologize. Looking at the specs, looking at the photos here rather than having it with me in person. But yeah, apart from that little issue, I guess, with the sleeves, I did really enjoy knitting up this garment. I will say that because of the 100% superwash merino wool that I used, this grew a lot with blocking. So once I finished the body, I actually did a mid-project block because I wanted to see, after having been blocked, how far the shoulders were coming down, so I would know then how long to knit the sleeves. So I did a mid-project block. It grew quite a bit in the body, which was great because I didn't want it to be super fitted. I definitely wanted there to be a bit of positive ease. And then when it came to knitting the sleeves, I knit all the way down until right before the cuff for both sleeves and blocked them again, just so that I could get an idea of how long they really were when they were finally blocked, because cables, superwash, it definitely stretches a lot. And then after that second block, I knitted the cuffs and then blocked the sleeves again in an attempt to widen them as much as I could. And then 2 minutes before leaving and actually giving these gifts, I was frantically trying to dry the sleeves. I had them in my dryer at a super low, delicate setting, as to not, felt the wool or anything. But it worked. The sleeves dried. The sweater didn't shrink, didn't get felted, so it was all good. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this one. It was a bit more straightforward as I did not do any modifications aside from, I guess, lengthening the sleeves a little bit. And I am really happy with how this turned out, and she loves it, and she wore it to work today and sent me a photo, so that was really exciting. It's definitely tricky or risky knitting something for someone else, specifically a garment, because you don't really know. Everyone is a little bit particular about how they like their clothes to fit, what kind of styles they like wearing. And, I get so used to knitting for myself, and I kind of know what to look out for in patterns and know what will flatter my body and what I will enjoy wearing. But when it comes to other people, even if they're people you know really well, it's sometimes hard to gauge what they're gonna like. And of course, like, I am always a little bit hesitant gifting something because what if they don't like it? I don't want anyone to ever just wear the garment because they feel bad because it was a gift. I want it to be something that they really enjoy. So I definitely was nervous gifting these, but ultimately it was very fulfilling. Knitting these two projects took up the bulk of my year. I think the sweater/cardigan number 20 I started in March and finished in July. And the Seaview sweater I started August and finished last week. So definitely a labor of love. Definitely kind of, my big knitting project for the year. But it felt good to spend a lot of time knitting for other people this year rather than, just mindlessly knitting garments for myself back to back to back. And ultimately I am really happy with the final products of both of these. I'm definitely happy to make modifications to either of them should they need. I have more of the yarn left. But yeah, overall I feel good having finally completed this project that I've been talking about for a year and actually gifted these garments. As for whips, I've mostly been working on gift knits, admittedly. That's kind of where I'm trying to channel all of my focus for the end of the year. I'm notorious for overcommitting to making just too many gift knits, and then when Christmas rolls around, there are one or two that are still on the needles, and I did want to avoid that this year, but it's hard to, I guess, I love knitting and people know that I knit, and so I want to give knitted gifts to as many people as I can, and as a result I do tend to bite off more than I can chew. This year I feel like I have a reasonable load. I'm knitting projects that don't take too long to make, and I'm sort of timing out, like I put together a whole schedule of when I'd like to start and complete each project, corresponding to my various Christmas celebrations. So I'm hoping that that is helpful and that I don't get too caught up in, saving everything for the last week of December, frantically trying to give these gifts out. The first whip that I have, though, is not a gift knit. It's something I'm knitting for myself that I'm trying to get done by Christmas, and it's something that I'm just so extremely proud of and excited about and cannot wait to share. I've shared some photos of it on my Instagram. Well, it's been in progress, but this is a project that is really distracting me from my gift knits, I have to say, because it is so fun. I'm really, really enjoying it. And it is my first color work project. So I am knitting the Lumme Pullover by Sari Nordlund, which is a stranded color work project, just 2 colors. I'm knitting it up in the Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks, so the Wool of the Andes worsted. And before I show the sweater, I'll show you my swatch. So this was my first time ever knitting a swatch in the round. I figured it was important for tension just because I know that with color work, tension is kind of a big important part of your garment. So I figured knitting the swatch flat would probably not give the same idea of what the garment would look like when knitted up in the round. So I knitted this swatch in the round. I had no clue what I was doing. I cut down the middle, and maybe I didn't leave those floats long enough because immediately it started unraveling on the end, and you can see that there are like holes in the swatch, but isn't it beautiful? So I ended up going up a needle size from this. This was a 5mm needle. I ended up deciding to do the color work in 5.5mm because it was knitting up a bit tight, and I figured I'd rather it be a little bit oversized than too small. But I was very proud of this swatch, and so I wanted to immediately cast on the sweater, which was what I did. And so this is what I have so far for my Lumme pullover. I am beyond obsessed with this. This was my first ever color work project. I made a tiny color work Christmas ornament last year, and it was knitted flat. So definitely not the same, but I just cannot get over how beautiful this pattern is. And I'm so happy with the color choice as well. I wanted it high contrast, and I wanted it to be something that felt, you know, Christmassy and on theme for the holidays, but that wasn't overtly in your face, like Christmas trees, reindeer, and so that I could wear it into January as well. Yeah, so this is just such a gorgeous motif. I think these flowers are just unreal, and seeing it all knitted up on camera like this makes me feel so proud that I actually did this myself. Like, I cannot believe I have made this, and I just want to wear it so badly. I have like one row left of the color work motif before I move into short rows and then just stockinette for the rest of the body. And then there is also more color work at the cuffs of the sleeves, so that will come back later. I just can't stop looking at it. It's gorgeous. The colors I used for Wool of the Andes are white for the contrast color, and the main color is called Garnet Heather. So it is like a very subtly heathered yarn, but it's not too obvious or distracting. I will say my tension has improved as I've gone through this sweater. I think from here down, the tension is really great. But up here, I definitely think I was holding my floats a little too tight. And as a result, it has come out a little bit bumpy. I think this is something that I can partially resolve with blocking. And whatever doesn't block out, I'll deal with. I think that's okay. I think for my first try, ultimately this did come out better than I was even expecting. So if it does have a few bumps, I'm totally okay with that. I don't need it to look store-bought. I actually would prefer if it looked homemade because I'm so proud of having made this. So yeah, that is where I'm at. The charts pattern so far are super clear, easy to understand. One modification that I made is very subtle, but for the neckline, she suggests knitting the entire neckline and then going into the colorwork motif, and then at the very end, folding down and sewing down the collar. I opted to just sew it down as I was going. So when I got to the desired collar length, I just picked up from the cast on edge, knitted two together, and then continued into the body, just because I didn't want to have to go back and sew this down later. And I find that just so much easier to do it while I'm already going. I might have knitted it a couple rows too long, but I think when I block it, it will stretch out a little bit and it won't be as tight on my neck. So yeah, all in all, I am so obsessed with this, and it really makes me want to knit more color work. I feel like I'm opening now doors to a new realm that I never saw myself entering. But now that I know I can do it, I just am so excited about the possibilities of what I can knit in 2025. I feel like I definitely got into a bit of a rut in the last couple of years of just knitting very plain stockinette projects, which is fine because I tend to enjoy wearing those quite a bit. They're very versatile. But something like this is just like, I'm extending a skill, and it's also like, it just feels like a work of art to me, even though, you know, I didn't come up with this pattern. I'm just following what Sari Nordlund told me to do. I still feel just so like impressed by this. So I am just really excited to join the Lumme Club. Hopefully have this off my needles by Christmas. I'm really trying, along with the gift knits. But yeah, that's my Lumme. The next whip is something I have shown on the podcast before. This is my Monday sweater by PetiteKnit, and I'm knitting it up in, oh, losing these balls here. This is Twill from Knit Picks, which is a 100% superwash merino, and this is the Berry Suri base from Woolberry Fibre Co. in the colorway Flock, which is kind of this neutral beige brownish color with lots of colorful specks in it, lots of reds, some blues, some yellows. And this is how it looks so far. So I am like a couple rows into the body ribbing, and you would think that I would just power through and finish and bind off the body, but I did kind of jump right into Christmas knitting, and I wanted to get those other gift knits finished off the needles and gifted. This is something that I will for sure pick up again whenever I want something quick and easy and mindless to knit. It is extremely soft, so I'm very excited to have this off the needles and have it on my body. But for now, it is just not a priority, unfortunately. So it is sitting in a bucket next to my couch, a basket next to my couch, where it will probably sit until January when I pick it up again. But yes, this combination is incredible. I have been alternating skeins of the Suri. I don't know how important that is. I haven't noticed huge differences from one skein to the next, but I didn't want to have any regrets if I didn't do it. So basically from halfway through the raglan yoke, I started alternating. And yeah, that's how it looks. So not too much progress to report on this one, but I am very excited to join the Monday Sweater Club. I feel like everyone at this point has knit multiple of these, and I can see why. It's such an easy, simple pattern, and you know, the result is a basic garment that will go with anything. So definitely a good choice to highlight this beautiful Suri, and I can't wait to wear this. My last whip is a gift knit. It's something that I've been kind of working on the go. I've been taking this in my bag with me to work and knitting on the metro and knitting while I walk, actually, which is something that I had never done before this year, but I have really been enjoying walking and knitting. As the temperatures plummet below 0, it's getting less and less enjoyable to knit outside while I walk, so it has become sort of just a public transportation project. But this is just the Weekend Hat by PetiteKnit, or it will be the Weekend Hat by PetiteKnit, and I am knitting it up in, once again, Knit Pick Swish. This is the DK weight version, and the color is Hollyberry, which is actually the same color I knitted my Weekend Hat in. My Weekend Hat is knitted up in Wool of the Andes Sport from Knit Picks, but again, because I'm knitting a hat and it's for somebody else and I'm not sure, you know, the yarn, their wool tolerance, excuse me, I figured Swish was a good option. Because it's going to be sitting on their head, I just want to make sure that it's something soft and comfortable. So I won't state who this is for because I don't know who's watching my videos, but this is what I have so far on the Weekend Hat. Really nothing special. The only modification I am making is one that I made on my own as well, and that is just omitting the rows of double knitting that sort of encourage the hat to fold. I don't love how those look on the hat. I find that they're always a little bit visible, and I'm finding that with the collar of my Monday sweater, I'm having a similar issue. So I figured I could just omit them and fold it, and you know, the more I wear it like this, the more it remembers this shape. So I don't think I necessarily needed those rows. It is sitting where it sits and it hasn't moved around too much. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Another modification I'm actually considering is not really a modification, but it's just flipping the hat inside out. because when I was looking at my hat inside out the other day, I noticed that the decreases just look a lot neater on the inside. And I know a lot of people have said that their ribbing looks a lot better on the wrong side, and I definitely agree. My ribbing looks way neater on the wrong side. I don't necessarily mind, and I've already been wearing it this way around, so I will keep it like this, but for comparison, this is how the decreases look on the right side. And that's how they look on the wrong side. So we'll see how this comes out, and then I think I will kind of make a split decision of which side I'm going to use as the right side. Ultimately, the only difference is that when I switch my ball of yarn, and you can see I didn't even weave in the ends on my own hat, those would be on the right side, so I just have to be a little bit more careful about weaving them in neatly. But yeah, the weekend hat is my favorite hat pattern I've knit thus far. I made the Oslo hat not long ago for a friend, or a couple years ago now, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I was also sort of near the beginning of my knitting journey, so I might have made a mistake, or maybe I was using the wrong fiber. I would love to try it again at some point because I know that it's like a favorite in the knitting community. But I do love a simple ribbed beanie, so the weekend hat by PetiteKnit I think is perfect. And it's simple enough that it's an easy gifting option, that there's, you know, there's nothing crazy about it. It's pretty universal in that I'm sure anyone who received it would love to have it. So that is it for today. I don't have any new acquisitions or plans, just because the rest of the month is going to be dedicated to gift knitting. I do plan on knitting a couple more Oslo hats. I was just talking about the Oslo hat. I do plan on knitting a couple more weekend hats as gifts for other family members. So I'll be sure to share those once I've made them. I don't know how much I'll share of the actual process of making them, just in case people are watching this channel. But that is basically what the rest of my December is going to look like. Finishing my gift knits and finishing my Lumme. And hopefully by the next episode, that will be a finished object, and I will wear it to every Christmas celebration I have this year because I am just obsessed with it, if you couldn't tell. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. It was definitely a quick one today, but I was really excited to share these finished objects. I would have loved to actually have them in person and show them, but it just wasn't possible for me to film last week. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I wish you all happy knitting and a happy holiday season, and I will see you next time.